I would just like to say that, clearly what we see today is that we see the capitalization of crisis situations in which we want to pass radical legislation. And some people can argue that these crises are created. Some could argue that they're extended for periods of time so they become to a size and a degree in which this radical legislation has to be passed. And one of the best ways we can combat that from happening at our federal government level is to take the next step as a state when these situations arise, take matters into our own hands if necessary, because that'll show the federal government and those that are out there to try to cram this legislation down our throat and be opportunistic with what they're doing, that it's not going to work. Because by the time they try to get around to it, hopefully we'll have addressed the problem, and then they'll be stuck with the battle of public opinion if they try to come down on the states for doing something they were unwilling to do. I think it's another way you empower the people, you empower the states, and you push back the federal government, because that's more anything what we have got to start doing.
Ms. Roby, Bobby Bright is a self-described blue dog conservative Democrat who has voted against his party several times. Why should District 2 voters choose you instead of Congressman Bright?
Well, first of all, where Bobby Bright is failing the voters in District 2 is that when given the opportunity to fight for you, he has failed. Number two, he's not listening to you. When you want to talk to Bobby Bright and you want to tell him what's on your mind, where is he? And the very first vote, which is by far the most important vote, is that he voted for our current Speaker of the House. And I promise you, if given the opportunity, my very first vote will take that gavel away from Nancy Pelosi so we can restore I've had many opportunities on the City Council to spend time with Congressman Bright while he has been mayor of the city of Montgomery. And I assure you that Bobby Bright is with the party that he shares fiscal policy. I watched as he ran that budget up over $1 million over the course of the $100 million over the course of the 9 years that he was mayor of the city of Montgomery. He drained our reserve fund, left us with a zero budget balance in our reserve fund at a most critical time in our economic situation in this country. He voted for Nancy Pelosi, and I don't care if he votes against every other piece of legislation. Quite frankly, he voted for it when he voted for her. And that is so important for people in this country, but more important for people in this district to understand. Government is best when government is closest to the people. We need to restore accountability and transparency in the people that we send to represent us. We don't need Congress lecturing us on what we need to do or what we need to hear. We need a Congress that will listen to what our needs are and then go up to Washington and fight for those interests. Not just vote right, but fight for us every time. And I will do that.
Why Rick Barber instead of Bobby Bright?
Wow, Bobby Bright, I need a lot more than 4 minutes. I'll tell you, the number one thing, on top of everything Mrs. Roby said, the number one thing Bright does not bring to the table is leadership. I can tell you, as a non-commissioned officer in the Marine Corps, someone who's developed several businesses in my time, I can tell you, there are several factors that go with being a solid leader. First and foremost, you must have a stand. People must know that you have a position. Whether they agree with you or not, they will respect you because they know where you stand. And they will follow you most likely as long as you can explain that stand and listen to the other counter-arguments that are there. More than that, you've got to be willing to fight. And you've got to be willing to take the hard questions, not dodge constituents. As part of the Tea Party, we had several groups that we tried to take to Bobby Bright and put in front of him because he didn't want to have town hall meetings about the health care bill last August during the August recess. He had a chance to be a hero like he has many times and he chose not to. And he had a chance to come out and talk to these seniors and say, you know what, I'm glad you came out. I know your issues are important to you. I'm sorry I've been so unavailable. But he didn't do that. He chose to sneak out the back door. And that is not leadership, folks. More than that, that's not representation for the constituents of his district. He didn't want to have a town hall meeting, so we had to put our own on in the Capitol steps of Montgomery. We gave him the opportunity to show up for that one too. Gave him plenty of weeks' notice. Gave him to tell us to pick the date. Let him pick the date. We would put it together for him. And again, a no-show. Well, partially a no-show. we made sure we had a silhouette of Bobby Bright with his face stapled to his front, so that we could feel like we had a congressman there to talk to. And we had over 200 people show up that were there to talk about the health care bill, what they liked, maybe what they didn't like, what they were concerned about. More than that, they were there to talk about what they didn't like about the representative. And I'll tell you something, if you want to know how to defeat Bobby Bright and why Rick Barber, I'll tell you, I'm the only candidate that is on record on taking him to task since he's been a congressman. I've been there with the Tea Party on 3 separate events, holding him accountable. I've been calling him out with his stands on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, stands on the bailout program, and all the things he doesn't want to stand up for. You can't ride a fence and be a leader. He pays lip service to both sides of the field and expects that to be leadership. The other thing a leader can't do is you can't expect to make everybody happy. The minute you decide that you're going to make everybody happy as a leader, you better step down and let someone else take your position, because it just isn't going to happen. If you want bold leadership, you want people that, or better yet, someone who has shown through his campaign that he will take the stand, invite the criticism, invite the name-calling from the liberals, then you have one choice in this race, and that's Rick Barber.
Well, I just want to demonstrate the lack of leadership that we've seen from our congressman through one quick example. The night that the House of Representatives was voting on the health care bill, we watched as he was given a very, very long leash to vote against it on final passage. But what wasn't reported was the fact when the Republican leader, John Boehner, the minority leader, put forth the Republican substitute that addressed real health care reform, real commonsensical solutions to driving down costs of health care in this country, he wasn't given quite that same long leash. And when given the opportunity to vote for a conservative alternative, he voted against it. And then wrote an op-ed in the Montgomery Advertiser the following day talking about all the reasons why he couldn't vote for his party's bill. Every single one of those things were addressed in the Republican substitute. And since then, he has said it is too premature to repeal this bill because there's some good things in it. Ladies and gentlemen, that does not represent you. That is not what I have heard you say time and time again all throughout this campaign. We need someone who will listen and then go fight.